Hi everyone, Ness here, back again to talk about human rights. Today I'm going to talk about the right to earn at least minimum wage for work you do, and the differences in how this right is protected or not protected depending on what state you live in. First, let's talk about minimum wage. Minimum wage is the smallest amount you can legally be paid for work per hour. Minimum wage is not the same everywhere or for every job. For instance, federal minimum wage, which is the lowest wage any state is allowed to pay their workers, is $7.25 per hour. But Massachusetts minimum wage, which is the lowest you can be paid for working in Massachusetts, is $12.75 an hour. Massachusetts minimum wage is being raised to $15 an hour by 2023, and in order to get there, it's going up a little bit every year. So this year minimum wage is $12.75. Next year it's going to be $13.50. The year after it's going to be $14.25, and finally in 2023 it's going to be $15 an hour. However, this rule about how much you have to be paid does not apply to every type of job. For example, in Massachusetts, people who work on farms can legally be paid only $8 an hour. How much you can legally be paid doesn't only depend on what type of work you're doing. Depending on what state you live in, there are also other reasons a worker can legally be paid less than minimum wage. What I'm going to be focusing on is that in most states, it's still legal to pay workers with disabilities less than minimum wage. In order to pay less than minimum wage, an employer or company has to apply for a special certificate from the Department of Labor. A few states, including New Hampshire, Alaska, Maryland, and Vermont, have their own laws that say it's not legal to pay workers with disabilities less than minimum wage. In Massachusetts, employers can still technically apply for these certificates to be able to pay workers with disabilities less than minimum wage, but workplaces that pay workers less than minimum wage mostly don't exist in Massachusetts anymore because of a different law. So, to explain a little bit more about that, a lot of places that employ folks with disabilities, specifically folks with developmental or intellectual disabilities, are these things called supported employment programs, which are funded through the state, and they're intended to help workers with developmental disabilities get jobs and give them support while they're at their jobs. The Massachusetts Department of Developmental Services, or DDS, which provides funding and oversight to programs that support folks with developmental disabilities, including supported employment programs, have moved away from funding programs to support folks to have jobs where they're paid less than minimum wage. So while a workplace in Massachusetts can still apply for the certificate from the federal government to be able to pay their workers with disabilities less than minimum wage, these workplaces can't get funding from DDS to be able to have support people there to help disabled workers, and they can't collaborate with DDS-funded programs to have folks with developmental disabilities placed with them for work. So because of this, workplaces that pay workers with disabilities less than minimum wage mostly don't exist in Massachusetts anymore. A lot of other states still provide funding to employment programs that pay workers with disabilities less than minimum wage. So, if this seems like a problem to you, I have some good news, which is that change is slowly but surely happening. Lawmakers in 2019 introduced a bill called the Raise the Wage Act, which would raise minimum wage to $15 an hour across the country and also make it illegal to pay workers with disabilities less than minimum wage everywhere. This bill passed in the House of Representatives but has not yet passed in the Senate. In order for something to become a law, it has to pass in both the House of it has to pass in both the House of Representatives and the Senate, and then be signed by the President. So if you think raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour and making it illegal to pay workers with disabilities less than minimum wage is a good idea, one thing you can do is write a letter or email your senator or call your senator and ask them to pass the Raise the Wage Act. I'll drop more information about this bill and information on how to find out who your senator is and how to contact them in the comments. So that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions or comments about what I said in this video, feel free to leave a comment or message our page, West Region Self Advocacy on Facebook. Also, please comment with other human rights topics you want to hear about. I'll be back next week with another Facebook Live video on human rights Wednesday at 5:30. Thank you all.